Okay, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you have a cacao, grab your cacao. If you have a glass of water, grab your glass of water. Take a sip. Feel it move into your physical body and bring your attention into the here and now. Enjoy the feeling of your cacao or your water moving into your stomach. And maybe for the first time today, become aware of your internal processes. And just do a body scan to get a felt sense of how you are today, state of your beingness today. Not to judge it, not to figure it out, not to change it, just to become aware of your beingness today, your internal beingness. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel yourself sink into the chair if you're sitting. Let the earth and the chair beneath you start to take some of your weight. Letting any tension, apprehension, just drop into the earth, the chair below you. And I'd like you to send a wave of intention or a commandment to your body to allow all the cells to open up to receive the information that will be coming through today. Let your body know that it can relax and open up to receiving all the data that's going to be coming in, and without you having to do anything at all, let your body know that this information can unlock whatever treasures are within you that you're ready to unlock today. Remember, all the wisdom is within your cells. It's within the DNA. And the key is relaxation and allowing what wants to come in, and to unlock these gifts, these cities. You don't have to do anything. Just relax. Let the earth hold you. Allow your heart to open. Allow your mind to open. I want you to feel this beautiful quote that says, when the heart thinks and the mind feels, the rivers of wisdom flow. And so today you're going to listen and think with your heart, and you're going to feel with your mind, and you're going to allow wisdom to flow through your system, unlocking the gifts within you, clearing the pathways that are stuck. Now the big deep breath in, letting that land. When you're ready, Open your eyes. And we are going to begin. Okay. If you want to take notes, you can. But if you just want to listen, just let the information go in. Starting with our diagram that we're going to be revisiting again and again and again, I want to give you where we are going to be diving into today. So this is our map. We talk about how data energy comes into the system, moves through the peripheral nervous system into the central nervous system, where this information is translated firstly as sensation. So we get a reading of the body's valence versus arousal. This then talks to different complex multimodal brain regions and attempts to figure out what is this data. What's happening is that we are talking to the memory centers within inside of the brain, and we are accessing all sorts of information in order to put the picture together. And now we're slowly going to be diving into how memory is made up of trauma and socialization. Trauma and socialization that has also been traumatic always has to do with the perceived loss of human needs, which is why we are beginning a deep dive into the human needs this week. I've added here that based on how you think, your trauma, your socialization, your perspective, your concepts, all of this together make up your consciousness. So depending on your level of consciousness, which is a huge field of information, a conglomerate of all the information that you have within you, your level of perceived awareness, this will dictate the prediction that you make. Now, if you predict that something is going to be threatening because in the past you had an experience similar to the data coming in, that resulted in the loss, the perceived loss of a human need, your prediction will tap into the hurt, vulnerable aspect of yourself. So remember here that the hurt, vulnerable parts of yourself hidden within your subconscious always have to do with the associated loss of a human need. The system perceives these parts as threatening or dangerous. Threatening in terms of getting your needs met. And so we have to hide them in our subconscious. So again, this aspect holds the memory of which needs were lost because of it is hidden away in your subconscious. This is what we call shadow. Shadow in the subconscious. Now, without you even knowing that you do this at first, this will then trigger an effect. That effect is the creation of a protector self. This is a signal that gets sent through the peripheral nervous system, talking to the cells of your body that say, act in this way. So this is a behavioral adaptation. Call them a behavioral adaptation. Protector self, manipulative pattern, mask, behavioral adaptation. This is the part of you that was created on the spot to get your needs met no matter what. That's really important to understand. No matter what. Doesn't matter if it gets them met in a healthy or unhealthy way. This is its job. It will morph itself into anything that it needs to be to get your needs met in any way it knows how. These are the masks you wear. Of course, once you have set into motion your prediction, this trigger and this creation of a protector self is impossible to stop because you set it in motion once you made the prediction. Then the effect happens. And this is what causes the creation of emotions and behaviors. So the signal that gets sent through the body results in specific emotions and specific behaviors. And this has to do usually with your protector self. So you will see the emotions of the protector self and the behaviors of the protector self come to the forefront of the personality, but the emotions and the behaviors of the vulnerable self are still hidden within that protector self. So this is a very interesting topic of conversation. It's not today's topic of conversation. We're just touching on it again. And then the loop repeats itself. So based on the emotions and the behavior that one engages in, that data then comes back through the system. We're also catching data from how that is perceived in the outside world, sending more data back into the system so that you can figure out, was your prediction in fact correct or incorrect? So today we're going to be specifically looking at trauma and socialization, or the beginning of it, mostly looking at the loss of needs. So what these needs are is something we need to talk about, and why we can't heal, expand our consciousness. So now the way that I'm defining healing is the expansion of consciousness. So why we can't expand our consciousness if we don't find ways to meet our needs. This is one of the topics of discussion for today. And we're also going to talk a lot about this. This first hour, I'm going to be talking mostly about how we expand our consciousness. And then I'm going to show how these two are connected. So why human needs being met and the expansion of consciousness are absolutely key players. You can't expand your consciousness without having the needs met. Then we're going to be moving into our exercise for today. So this is going to take about an hour. I'm going to talk to you for about an hour. Keep your questions until the end, because I'm probably going to answer them as we go. Then we're going to spend the second half of class doing the exercise. So how do we heal our suffering, activate our well-being, and fill our lives with joy, happiness, and love? I've said this before. What we need to do is we need to learn how to expand our perspective so that it aligns with God, the all, the monad. I'm using different names now because different people use different names. So everything is mind. All of these levels are actually mind, body, emotions. I could just call this limited mind. And then we have causal mind, Buddhic mind, Atmic mind, monadic mind. So what we're attempting to do is to lift our consciousness or expand our consciousness, our mind, to greater and greater and greater levels, to go from limited mind to limitless mind. Okay, ready for the new discussion of the week? We're going to dive in here. We're going to be looking at the monadic, Atmic, Buddhic, causal mind, emotions, body planes. And we're going to talk about how we do this first. So in breaking this down, I want you to understand that there are numerous levels of intelligence. You guys heard of IQ before? Probably heard of IQ before, right? Because the Western world is absolutely obsessed with us increasing our IQ, which is our intellectual intelligence. But we have other types of intelligence as well. We have our EQ, which is our emotional intelligence. We have our CQ, which is our creative intelligence. And we have our SQ, which is our spiritual intelligence. Now, there are more than just this, but this is enough to look at today. So what I want you to understand here is that these 4 types of intelligence need to start playing together. I'm going to have a look at each one individually. I have a dotted line here. This is important to understand because, by the way, some of you asked really good questions last week and it sent me into a frenzy. I started making this presentation about an hour after our call last week. So I'm attempting to answer lots of your questions at the same time. So what I want you to know here is that above the monadic perspective as a human being, there are many more layers of consciousness. So there are levels of awareness that are far beyond human potential, far beyond human potential. But if we actually were to lift our consciousness to that level, our physical bodies would disintegrate. We couldn't have a physical body anymore because there are levels of awareness that do not support the creation of a physical body, or at least the game becomes very, very, very different, very different. And I also want you to understand that there are levels of human potential that are lower than our current state of consciousness. So the lowest human potential, let's say, is down here. Obviously, this is just a visual representation of the lowest, but there are dimensions of experience that are far vibrationally, let's say that the vibration is even denser than it is here. So there are denser planes of existence than human existence. So if we were to drop our consciousness that low, our bodies would also change because it's not the frame that the human body exists within. Once you start understanding energy and you look at how when you start to increase vibration, form changes. And so there are extremely high frequencies in which the body can no longer exist. And there are very low frequencies in which the human body can no longer exist. This is one of the things that I want you to hold in your mind. Now we're going to talk about each one of these intelligences for a little bit. Okay, so let's start with the IQ. IQ is known as intellectual quotient. It is a measure of a person's intellectual intelligence, which quantifies their ability to understand, reason, and apply knowledge. So some of the key aspects that are inside of the IQ are your analytical thinking, your ability to break down complex problems into smaller, more manageable parts and solve them logically. You have logical reasoning. This is your capacity to make sense of information and draw appropriate conclusions, often addressed through pattern recognition and problem solving. So your ability to recognize patterns and solve problems. Memory is part of the IQ. This is the ability to store, retain, and then recall information, which is crucial for learning and applying new knowledge. Verbal skills are inside of the IQ. So this is proficiency in language, including understanding and using vocabulary, grammar, and syntax effectively. We already talked about how vocabulary increases. Well, this is really interesting, right? So your vocabulary, which is a part of your IQ, can also help to increase EQ because they do work with each other. And then this is mathematical ability, your capacity to perform mathematical operations and understand numerical concepts. Now, the more you get into the mystery schools and the information that came through the mystery schools, a lot of them said, and we're going to dive into this more deeply as we start to explore the Kybalion together, that the universe is mathematical. It's all mathematical. It's all equations. So your ability to understand numbers is actually part of your awakening. It is a piece of the puzzle, just a piece of the puzzle. Now we have the EQ. So this is known as your emotional quotient, also known as emotional intelligence. And as you guys will probably know, everybody in the alternative healing community is now talking about raising your emotional intelligence because we have recognized that we have become way too top heavy in Western society. So everyone who has understood that is now trying to balance that out or lift up the EQ. This is a measure of a person's ability to identify, understand, manage, and use emotions effectively in themselves and in their interactions with others. Use emotions, which means you have to be in control of your emotions. Unlike IQ, which focuses on cognitive abilities, EQ is centered around emotional and social competencies. So key components of EQ are self-awareness, your ability to recognize and understand your own emotions, strengths, weaknesses, values, drivers. This includes being aware of the impact of your emotions and your thoughts and behavior on others. So your ability to recognize this is the state I'm in and this is the impact it has on the people and the things around me. Self-regulation. Everyone's talking about regulation of the nervous system right now. So regulation, the capacity to manage your emotions in a healthy way. This has to do with regulation of the nervous system. Controlling impulsive feelings and behaviors, managing stress, and adapting to changing circumstances, which I'm going to let you guys know, I'm going to point to it right now. This has to do with your perception. It has to do with your perception because your perception dictates your emotions and your behaviors. So your ability to regulate your perception quickly and adapt to changing environments. Motivation is part of EQ. Your passion for work, your passion for personal growth that goes beyond external rewards like money or status. So this isn't the external motivation. This is called intrinsic motivation. This is about waking up within you that passion, that inner knowing that drives you to move forward, not because you're getting something from it that you need, but because it's who you are, because it's excitement, it's passion. It involves setting and working towards personal, professional goals with persistence and resilience, which is actually only possible long-term in a healthy way if it's internal motivation. It's because it's who you are. It actually fuels you, it feeds you, it causes you to grow and expand. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. To go deeper into empathy, empathy is your capacity to actually be inside of someone else's experience and to understand them as if they are you, to have that type of insight. It's not just to look at their face and think you know what they're feeling, but to actually have the experience of being within them. Empathy is actually a acidic quality. It's a very high state of being, and it means to be within another. So you have to have become not just you've become one with so deeply that you are understanding another as if their experience is your experience. That's the highest form of empathy. And social skills, proficiency in managing relationships, building networks, navigating social complexities. This includes effective communication, conflict resolution, and leadership abilities. This is part of EQ. Now, the next two that aren't so talked about, but that are unbelievably important here, and I've got a lot here for this one, we got to talk about CQ, which is your creative intelligence. So CQ, or I've just called it creative intelligence, encompasses a huge spectrum of abilities and traits that enable individuals to think in innovative and original. I want you to almost write those two words down. Innovative and original, new thought, new concepts, new ideas, your thoughts, your original ideas. This is part of creative intelligence. It is a multifaceted form of intelligence that goes beyond traditional cognitive abilities, integrating various components that collectively foster creativity and problem solving. So here are some of the key components of creativity being obviously at the heart of it. This involves the ability to generate novel and valuable ideas, new ideas. It is the process of thinking beyond conventional boundaries to develop new concepts, approaches, solutions, not just what you've been told, it's to go outside that. Imagination, which fuels creativity by allowing you to visualize possibilities that don't yet exist. It is the capacity to form mental images and envision potential outcomes, scenarios, and innovations. So your ability to create worlds inside your imagination. Insight, this is the ability to understand complex situations or problems at a deep level. It involves recognizing underlying patterns, connections, and truths that are not immediately apparent through your actual external eyes. Your ability to span out and go, I see this at a far higher level. Intuition. This refers to the ability to understand and know something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. You just know it. It is a quick and often unconscious form of cognition that guides decision-making and creative processes. Divergent thinking. Again, just let all this information go in. Divergent thinking is your ability to span out. Now, convergent thinking is when you start to zoom in. This happens under pressure, under stress. Whenever you think you're under pressure or stress, or you perceive a threat, normally the thinking starts to come in and it starts to focus on what you believe is the threat in front of you. It's actually a protective mechanism. So your ability to perceive a threat and zoom out, cause your thinking to go outwards, get bigger, expand, become oneness. This is divergent thinking. It is essential for creativity, involving the ability to generate multiple solutions to a problem. It encourages exploring a wide range of possibilities and thinking in various directions. It's the ability to think all over the place. This is a very strong trait of yellow in spiral dynamics, your ability to complex think, to problem solve in a very multi-dimensional way, to be able to look at something from this direction and this direction and this direction, because you've spanned out. There's more for creativity. We've got originality, which involves producing ideas that are unique and novel. I'm saying this many times because I want you to hear it. It's really pinnacle and it's great stuff. It's about thinking in ways that are not just different, but innovative and groundbreaking. Flexibility. This allows individuals to adapt their approach and thinking styles to different situations. It involves shifting perspectives, breaking away from established patterns, and considering alternative solutions, very similar to divergent thinking. Elaboration, the ability to expand on ideas or add details, refine concepts, and develop them further, making creative ideas more practical and applicable. Open-mindedness, the willingness to consider new and different ideas, even if they challenge existing beliefs and norms. It involves being receptive to new experiences and viewpoints. Curiosity, which drives the desire to learn and explore. It motivates individuals to seek out new information, ask questions, and continually expand their knowledge. Visualization, which we briefly touched on within creativity, your ability to create mental images and see possibilities that are not immediately apparent. And innovation. Innovation is a step beyond creativity, because innovation is the application of creative ideas in practical ways. So your actual practical application, this is to do with movement. It's about transforming original thoughts into tangible products, services, and processes that add value. I know it's a lot, just let it go in. Final one is your SQ, or your spiritual intelligence. This is a measure of a person's ability to explore and integrate deeper existential questions, personal meaning, and a sense of purpose in life. It involves the capacity to connect with oneself, others, and transcendent aspects of existence. Spiritual intelligence encompasses several key dimensions: self-awareness, which we've already talked about, and emotional intelligence, holistic thinking, the ability to see larger patterns and connections in life, understanding the interrelatedness. This includes thinking beyond immediate concerns and considering long-term implications and a far bigger picture. Compassion, a deep sense of empathy and caring for others, motivated by a genuine desire to help and serve. This extends to all living beings and the environment, not just your family, all things. Wisdom, the capacity to make sound judgments and decisions based on a deep understanding of life's complexities. Wisdom integrates knowledge, experience, insight, and often involves a moral or ethical dimension. So wisdom is the combining of all of it. Integration, which is our number one word, the ability to experience and integrate spiritual or transcendent states of consciousness. This can involve practices such as meditation, prayer, contemplation, and leads to experiences of unity, peace, connection with something greater than oneself. So now what I've done is I've just given you an overview of each of these different types of intelligence. You can go back and listen to this. You've got the slides, so you can look at it again. And the reason I did that is because I want you to start to understand something. Let's say that your consciousness in general sits about here. Your IQ is maybe a little bit higher than your EQ, and maybe your creative intelligence is a bit higher than both of them, and your spiritual, intelligence is low. Now, I'm actually putting this against this scale over here. So let's say that, you're dancing with consciousness between the body and the emotions at a relatively unconscious level. So let's just say this is your general state of consciousness. Or maybe this is your general state of consciousness, where your IQ is lower, but your emotional creative intelligence is higher, and your spiritual intelligence is, in comparison, a little bit higher than your IQ. Or maybe this is your state of consciousness. You've really pushed your IQ, you've studied a lot, your intellect is high, but your emotional body, your emotional intelligence is low. How many people in the West do you know like this? People who have a lot of information, but they cannot respond in a healthy way to their emotionally. This is actually very representative of most people in the West. So high IQ, low EQ, right? This is one of the things when I say when philosophy hasn't been experienced, it actually creates arrogance. This is possibly the visual of somebody who's got quite a lot of arrogance within them, because their EQ, their experience, their creativity, and their spiritual intelligence isn't matching their IQ yet. So if this is the case, here's the key, here's the essence of what I'm trying to say here. You have to become aware of where your strengths are. You have to recognize, I have a strong IQ, but I'm pretty emotionally unconscious, or I have a strong emotional intelligence, but intellectually I'm pretty low. You've got to start to understand where you are and work to your strengths. So if this were somebody's general state of consciousness, and you could just kind of ponder your own, then you could use your IQ. Now, this is so important to understand the work that we're doing. You can use your IQ to lift your emotional IQ. You can use your mental thoughts to lift your emotions. Then you can use your IQ and EQ to speak to your creative and spiritual intelligence and use that to lift those two. Then you might need to use your creative abilities to push up your emotional intelligence. Then you can use your emotional intelligence to lift up the others. Then you might need to push your mind up even higher, and then your mind may need to lift the others. Can you see what I'm saying here? You need to work with all these different types of intelligence in order to lift your consciousness up, 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 up. It's not just about intellectual pursuits. It's not just about experience. It's not just about creativity. It's not just about tapping into spiritual existential questions. It's about using the whole lot of them to push yourself to new heights of awareness. Now I'm going to dive into this because I've introduced this 4 or 5 times, but we've never actually looked at what these different levels of awareness are. So today we're going to actually start to look at these different levels of awareness from the body to the monadic. So these are 7 different levels of awareness. You have the body, the emotions, mind, causal, Buddhic, Atmic, and monadic are the names I'm giving them. This comes from Gene Key's If you want to study it more, I will do it later on. We'll go into it in more depth, but this is a concept that comes from the gene keys, gene key number 22. Now, there are numerous levels of consciousness far below the human body consciousness, and there are numerous levels of consciousness or experience far above the human monadic consciousness. Levels of awareness below and above human experience are not the topic of our conversation ever, really, because they are not something we can experience as a human being, nor are they something that will bring about a better human experience in any way, shape, or form. I just want to give you a little example of this for a second. When you're a baby in the womb, you don't know what's on the other side. This is a deeply spiritual teaching, but when you're a baby in the womb, you're starting to gather data from the other side. You know, you can hear voices and you have the ears to hear your mother and father's voices. You can hear music, you can experience things, but you don't yet have any concepts, language, or ideas that can help you understand the world beyond the womb until you are birthed. And then all of that starts to come together. It is very similar to what's happening to us here. At this point in time, we are in another type of womb. Guys, can you still hear me? Because I just want to see, did it drop out there for a second? Okay, you can still hear me.
It did drop it.
Okay, so just going back half a second. Sweet. Okay, so just going back half a second. When you're in the womb, you do not have concepts for what's outside of the womb. You are being prepared for what's outside. As above, so below, this continues happening. We're in another type of womb here, and we can push into the spiritual dimensions, but there comes a point where we cannot understand more than that. Even though we have been in incarnations for an extremely long time, there is still more. There's always more. So we can only start to develop and prepare ourselves to the point that is possible for a human being. And then when we transition into high states of consciousness, we will have the concepts and the capacity and the bodies to understand that. So what I'm saying here is we are in many ways preparing ourselves. We're always preparing ourselves to go to the next level, to go to the next level, to go to the next level. But the exploration of what's impossible to understand as a human being, as the Kybalion says, is only for people who are deeply arrogant, because it's impossible and it's not helpful. There's nothing that can be used. If you cannot understand the information and you cannot apply it to becoming a better human being, there's no point in it. And the whole point is to expand yourself to mastery as a human being. So I'm just adding here that the only reason to discuss the existence of higher and lower dimensions at all is so that we can humble ourselves in the knowing that there is always more to experience. Life didn't begin with a human being, nor will it end with a human being. However, mastering the human experience is an important stage of the development within the universal game. If you master the human experience, you are living a spectacular life. Spectacular. It's not like you would want more than that as a human being, because it is brilliant. So now that I've said that, let's look at these different states of consciousness through the lens of a human experience. So there are 7 levels of consciousness. Sorry, there are numerous levels of consciousness within each of the 7 levels presented here. So what you can imagine is that there are infinite dimensions of experience within the body level, many dimensions of experience in the emotional level, the mind level, the causal level. So it's not just that it's one plane and we've only got 7 steps to go. There are layers in between every single one. There are numerous texts and resources that go into the different subcategories of each level, but for today, we are going to do a very general overview of the 7. 2 of those texts are definitely the Gene Keys and also the Kybalion, but there are many, many others as well. So let's begin down here at the physical body level. So this is the foundational level of consciousness where we experience life through our physical bodies due to the codes within our human DNA. I've talked about how we experience stuff through the body. So we've been talking about body consciousness for the last couple of weeks. It involves our basic survival instincts and our sensory perceptions, which I've talked about. Sensory information coming in, sensory perception, our affect, this is all in the body consciousness. At this level, our consciousness is deeply rooted in the material world and the tangible aspect of existence. I want you to write this piece down, not the whole thing. I'm going to tell you what to write down. Mastery of the physical body includes the complete relaxation of all tension within the system. Again, can you understand why everybody's talking about nervous system regulation and relaxation right now, because as a collective, and this is very insightful, we have recognized that we haven't even mastered the lowest level of consciousness on the planet, and many people are talking about relaxing the nervous system. We're still at the bottom. Now, the integration of the relaxation of the nervous system completely is going to heal the wound of repression. Now, this is what I want you to write, that the full relaxation of the nervous system results in the integration of the collective wound of repression. So understanding that when you're working with the body, you are healing repression. Repression of what? Repression of emotions, repression of feelings, repression of the sensations within the body. That is what trauma is. Trauma is the repression, the freezing of our expression of energy. So when we stop repressing, we will actually start to express. When we stop repressing, we will start to express. This has to do with trauma healing at the physical level. This moves us to the emotional body, which is also called the astral body. Now, the emotional level deals with our human emotions, surprisingly, our desires, and our relationships with other people. It is where we experience the ebb and the flow of our emotions and desires based on our level of consciousness. So again, our level of understanding will dictate the type of emotions that we experience. This is what Lisa Feldman says. This is what Gene Keys says. Based on our level of consciousness, the experience we'll have through the emotional body. This level connects us to the astral plane, where our emotional energy interacts with others and also influences our behaviors and experiences. So it's a more intangible plane than our physical body, but it's still a more dense plane than the mental body. The astral body is sometimes called our aura. So people who can see auras can see the color of the emotional state, because there are certain colors that dictate the emotional state that somebody's in, which makes sense because emotions have a frequency. Frequency has color. So all of this stuff starts to come together. Those people who can genuinely see the aura of somebody are reading the emotional body of somebody, which is actually giving them insight into their level of consciousness or perception, because it's all frequency. Interestingly, I'm not going to go into too much depth here. Actually, no, you've already heard this, so it shouldn't be too complicated. It says here that the emotional body has a direct effect on our health. Do you remember in our other diagram where I say, depending on which emotions you are creating, you can go into the negative or positive emotions, and the negative emotions are decreasing the body budget, which can decrease the immune system, which can cause physical problems in the body. Well, this is what's happening. And this is what the ancient texts say as well, is that the emotional body has a direct correlation to our level of health. So depending on the frequency of your emotions, you will have that show up in the physical body. So you can imagine the emotions dictate the physical health as well. Depending on your level of mastery, you will either experience heaven or hell through your astral bodies, through your emotional bodies, and that will eventually transition into the physical body. Okay, now, mastery of the emotional body requires us to take complete responsibility, full responsibility. Blame at this level, how do I want to say this actually? If you are still in a loop of blaming other people, you have not mastered your emotional body, because this plane requires full responsibility of yourself and of your creation. What that means is you're taking full responsibility of your perspective that is creating your emotional and behavioral experience, which is what is causing the reflection of life to be as it is in your reality. You have to take full responsibility for your experience and your creations. This is what will end the collective wound of denial, which makes sense, because if you're in denial of your creation, you cannot heal it. And most people, think about it within yourself, most people have a perspective that leads to their suffering, that leads to particular behaviors that have a particular effect in their life. It causes the external environment to interact with that person in a certain way. So they have created that environment for themselves. They have chosen that experience, yes, at a subconscious level sometimes. They're still chosen it. And now they are in denial of the fact that they did it. The opposite of denial is to blame another, to blame the world, to blame the system, to blame the partner, to blame whatever. So at this level, you have to start to take full responsibility for your emotional creations and the behaviors that you engage in. When this wound is integrated, so when the wound of denial is fully integrated, guess what you will no longer experience? You will no longer experience fear, anger, rage, or aggression. Now I'm adding this piece here. I want you to hear this. Not because it's not possible to continue experiencing these things, it's always possible, but because at this level, you will have lifted your consciousness to the point where you realize it's your choice to feel those things. It's a choice. And you will also see that it's not helpful to have that choice anymore. It's not helpful nor effective to make choices that lead to fear and aggression and anger and war and fighting anymore. You just get to the point where you go, my protector self used to think that was a good idea, but now I see it is not. It's never leading to the outcome that I truly want, which is happiness and health and peace and connection and love. Fighting for peace is insanity. And as my mom likes to put it, because she's more crass than me, it's the same as fucking for virginity. You can't. It's impossible. You can't fight for peace. You have to raise your consciousness to realize that peace comes when you stop fighting. Next level, mind, mental, the mental level of consciousness. This encompasses thoughts, beliefs, and intellectual understanding. This is where your IQ hangs out. It involves the process of reasoning, analyzing, and conceptualizing. At this level, you develop your worldview and the frameworks through which you interpret reality. So that's why socialization happens here. There is a mental aspect to socialization. Hence why this body is greatly influenced by the collective. This is the level that gets greatly socialized. Trauma happens between all these three: mind, emotions, body. Trauma happens here, right? So I'm breaking them down, but they all have an effect on each other. So what is mastery of the mental level? Well, mastery of the mental level requires the embodiment of self-love. So this is where all the people who've kind of mastered their emotions are now talking about self-love. It's all about self-love, loving, embracing all aspects of self. So guess what happens when you truly apply self-love to the totality of you is that you heal the wound of shame and worthlessness within you and within the collective. So it firstly starts with you, and then it moves to the collective. So at the level of mastering your mind, you actually heal the wound of shame through self-love. Can you see that there's a beautiful map here? Just gonna come back and check for a second how you're doing. Good? Try something. Do this. Okay. So write that down. Mastery of the mental body requires self-love, and it leads to the healing of shame, worthlessness, unworthiness. These three bodies are what disintegrate after death. If you want a really well, we talk about it in the death module. So if you want to go back to that and go through the stages of death and see how firstly we leave the body, we leave the emotional and the mental body, and we move on from there, it's talked about really nicely in the module on death. So this is what disintegrates after death. Now we move on to the next level of consciousness, which is the causal body, the causal plane, also known as the soul. Now, the soul, or your causal body, collects, this is beautiful, all the goodwill of you as a human being. What this means is that the soul is like the storage hub for all high frequency thoughts, words, and actions that have been experienced during all of your incarnations. So it is storing all that information, all the goodwill from other incarnations, all the goodwill from every moment of goodness in this lifetime. It's all stored there. It's all maintained and remembered. As the causal body begins to develop more and more lucidity, these higher bodies, the Buddhic, the Atmic, and the Monadic, can actually start to direct higher and higher frequency energies through the causal body into the lower frequency planes, into the mind, emotions, and body. So this is where you start to access what we call the high self, right? You start to access the high self and start to gain access to the goodwill of your soul. So you are now talking to the soul. This is why I've got a little picture of a bridge here, because the soul or the astral body acts like a bridge. It's a bridge between the two. Mastery of the causal body happens through epiphanies. So what's an epiphany? Epiphany is an aha moment. That moment where you go, oh my God, I got it. Epiphanies are what end the collective wound of rejection. So this is self-rejection. We stop rejecting the self. These epiphanies help us to end rejection. You'll notice that we do this in a lot of our meditations. We have to expand your consciousness, turn around and look at yourself differently and have an aha moment, which ends the rejection. Now, I want to take this one a bit further because it's, again, this is such beautiful information. When you start to have the type of epiphanies that end self-rejection, guess what you disintegrate with inside of you? The borders, the barriers, and the walls that you have built up around your heart, around yourself, designed to keep other people out. Another way of defining those barriers and walls are your protector selves. Because what are protector selves protecting? All the parts of you that you've rejected. Do you understand this? So when you have wounded selves, these are the rejected parts, and the protector self is protecting you from feeling that pain, but what it's really doing is building up walls between you and other. So when you heal all the vulnerable parts that have been rejected, there is no longer need for protective selves. Hence why all the walls start to drop away from you. This will begin to also collectively manifest the disintegration of borders around the world. So I want you to look at the world and realize all these borders that we have around the world between countries. It's a manifestation of rejection, fear. It's just a metaphor for what you do inside, as above, so below. So when this happens within you, what happens is the higher three bodies start to explode into the lower three bodies, because these protector selves are not only protecting you from other people, they're like protective layers that stop these high frequency bodies dropping into your consciousness. So this is why we've got to heal the self-rejection so that you have access to that higher level wisdom. And the more that you do it, the more this beautiful high level wisdom, energy, love is going to pour into you and start to open your heart from the inside out. Isn't that beautiful? It's not about now what's happening outside, it's about what's happening inside. Again, the module on death talks about this through the death process, where I think we talked about it a week or two ago, when the soul starts to come back into harmony with oneness. At first it feels like it's been covered, and then it feels like it's exploding from the inside out. So this is also explaining our death in many ways. There's similarities to how the death process works as there are to the awakening process. When embodied at this level of awareness, you can live a truly romantic life, wearing your heart completely open on your sleeve without fear. So these are people who are not terrified or sad that they have open hearts or are highly sensitive. They walk around like that consciously because they know there's no wounds there to be hurt. So if somebody were to aim a horrible word or an idea or attack them, there's nothing for it to land on. It passes straight through them. Their heart isn't closed because of it. They see what's going on more clearly. There's nothing to be hurt. This is this level of awareness. So what that means is when you overcome the fear of rejection, you not only do away with the need for barriers around your heart, you become a pure agent of grace through friendliness and openness and honesty and kindness. Other people may come to you and they may be rude or cruel or mean. It doesn't close you down. No protector self comes in. It doesn't mean that you say yes to things that are unhealthy, but you do not lose your openness and your kindness and your love. Yes, you'll still say no. There is a huge difference between these barriers and these borders and your yeses and nos. Huge difference. I just want to put that there. So we talk about boundaries. I want you to understand that boundaries are not the same as these borders, barriers, and walls. They are two completely different things. Boundaries come from love. Borders, barriers, and walls come from fear. They are completely different. Now, you can imagine this does absolute wonders for your relationships. So when you start to master this causal plane of existence, your relationships start becoming magnificent. And finally, when the collective reaches this state of consciousness, world poverty will completely be eradicated once and for all. So this is how you can start to understand where we're at in terms of collective. You can also look at yourself and understand, because although we want to look at the collective, every single time you want to turn around and be honest with yourself. Because if you are not honest with yourself of where you're at, guess where you are? You're in denial. Guess where denial is? Right down the bottom. So let's move on to the Buddhic state. The Buddhic level of consciousness is characterized by universal love and enlightenment. It transcends the dualities of the lower levels and allows us to experience unity and oneness. Once anchored here, now I'm not talking about fleeting experiences, I'm talking about being anchored here. The causal body, this one here, the soul, actually begins to disintegrate. And this is where there is an end to reincarnation on lower planes of consciousness. Now that is both physical and metaphorical. It means that you're not going to keep reincarnating personalities that are unconscious. So slowly, we're going to incarnate to higher and higher levels of understanding. We also tap into higher wisdom and inner knowing that guide our actions with compassion and clarity. We're talking about what the gifts that the Buddha brought to the planet here. We're talking about becoming the Buddha. You know, your Buddha nature opens up. So mastery of the Buddhic body has to do with complete forgiveness of all. Complete forgiveness of all. Now, this doesn't mean you force it. Forgiveness is a byproduct of the elevation of your consciousness. If you try and forgive before you're ready, it won't work. Forgiveness is a byproduct of lifting yourself to this level of consciousness. When you get to this level of consciousness, what happens is you see things at such a large perspective that you could no longer blame, judge, hate, or not forgive. It just doesn't make sense anymore. You instantaneously reach a perspective where you realize forgiveness is all there is. It just happens. It happens. You can't help it because it's who you are. This is what ends the collective wound of guilt within you. At this level, guilt will be eradicated, and karma and curses and doubt. Curses are a mental construct. Yes, there are curses. Ultimately, you do it to yourself. But it's a game that we play with others. At this level of consciousness, that game's gone. It's a lower frequency game. Karma, curses, and doubt. When this happens, guess what? War is over. You're no longer fighting with yourself. You're no longer fighting with others. And at a collective level, war on our planet will be gone. I love this piece. The true meaning of justice will finally be revealed. When we're in low states of awareness, we have zero idea what real justice means. Justice is not punishment for the bad thing that somebody else did. That is a complete misunderstanding of justice. Justice is a universal law. It's already inbuilt in the system. It is just the law of cause and effect. Nothing we have to do other than follow our hearts. Justice it's inbuilt in the system. The man-made idea of justice has caused us to punish each other, and it actually causes more fragmentation, separation, and suffering. The Buddhic body, for those of you who are a little bit nerdy, I'm not going into this in any depth here, but the Buddhic body is the higher octave, think music, of the astral body. So just like there are different octaves in music, the Buddhic body is the astral body is the emotional body. So the Buddhic body is like the next frequency up. So they are on the same wavelength. It's just one octave up. Okay, let's get into the Atmic body. So what is the Atmic body? The Atmic body represents Christ consciousness. It is where we consciously experience the pure merging of divine mind and divine heart. When the mind feels and the heart thinks, the rivers of wisdom begin to flow through us. At this stage, we realize our true nature beyond the limitation of the ego and the personal identity, and we connect with universal spirit. This is the stage of consciousness where we have conscious access. Now, I wanted to put this in here. I want you to hear these words. Every single one of them is important. Conscious access and use of the different cities within us. It doesn't just happen to us. It is conscious. We have access. We use them like tools. We understand. We have control over them. Now, I've defined this a little bit more deeply here. The 64 cities, that when I use the word city from here on, I want you to think of ultimate human quality. And the Gene Keys is the one that does the most spectacular job at explaining these ultimate human qualities through the 64 cities. These are not simply mystical abilities. Mystical abilities are a small part, teeny, teeny, tiny part of the city. So when you start to, listen to the Gene Keys and they talk about these citic states, they are qualities of a human being. It is within their thoughts, their words, their actions, how they are. And as an effect of that, the body can do certain things. That's your mystical ability. You can, the levitating, the changing temperature, teleportation, all of that's in there. It says all of this is possible, but they are not the city itself. It's just a byproduct of reaching that frequency consciously. And when you can consciously use those things. I knew very early on that having a mystical ability without an awakened heart and mind, who cares? It's like being able to levitate a cup, but you're still an asshole. Who gives a fuck? I used to think of this because I had friends who were like, oh, I've learned how to levitate a cup, because they put hours and hours and hours of study and concentration into levitating the cup, which proves that they have, mastered a little bit of concentration, but they were still cheating on their partner. I was like, well, what the hell's the point? I met people in India who said they could levitate in their meditations and were horrifically cruel to women. Really? Is that a acidic state? No, that's just a little bit of energy mastery. That has nothing. Some people don't even know how they do it. So when I use the word city from here on out, I'm talking human potential and quality of who you are. Cities are conscious states of being that encapsulate deep understanding and integration of all the human virtue. Mastery of the Atmic level requires awakening to pure truth. This ends once and for all the collective wind of separation at all levels of being, all levels, all the way through, in and out. At this point, all seeking and striving for something outside ends, which simultaneously ends any and all indifference within you. Love for all is complete. Now, for those of you who might be thinking this, can you wake up the Atmic body but not have awoken the body, emotion, mind, causal, Buddhic planes? No, these move from each other. The Atmic body is awakened when the body, emotions, mind, causal, Buddhic planes are mastered. So it's a compounding exploration of self. So true love can only be possible when denial, repression, shame, guilt, and separation have ended. That is where we're heading. And then the monadic body. The monadic level is the highest state of consciousness where we become fully aware of our existence as part of the all. It is the ultimate realization of unity with the source. At this level, we embody the purest form of grace and recognize that we are an integral part of the cosmic whole. At this state of awareness, the lower three bodies are completely absorbed into the higher frequency counterparts. This is what is known as supraconsciousness. This is the 3-in-1 level of consciousness where all lower forms of consciousness, subconscious, conscious, and superconscious, have all merged and become greater than the sum total of the parts. Now, hear this. This is just a little key into the next space. At this stage, the opening of the 7th seal begins, and we begin our initiation into the realm of angels and beyond. Remember, a human being who has reached this stage may have mastered the human experience, but has only just begun the next phase of their evolution. So whilst we as humans look to that and go, wow, this is where I want to be, it's just one stage in a cosmic eternal dance. So it's just the beginning of the next birth that we will take. So what I want to show you here is I'm just bringing you back here so I can say this is what we've talked about so far, is that all the data that's coming into the system is going to be mixed inside of your consciousness. And I'm pretty much just talking here about the 7 planes of consciousness. That's what we've just gone through, these 7 planes of consciousness from the body to the monad. And I have expressed that one of the ways to lift our awareness through these 7 planes is through utilizing the intellect, the creativity, the emotions, and our spiritual ability to question. So working with our intellect is what will help us expand into those 7 layers of consciousness. Is this starting to bring the story together for you? All right, we're going to do more. I said it was a big morning. So now I'm going to briefly introduce you. And when I say briefly, I mean briefly introduce you to the 7 laws that govern all planes of existence. So those 7 planes that we just talked about, I'm going to talk about the laws that are the same at every level, including what goes beyond it and what goes below it. So this is our introduction into the Kybalion. So the first law, and this is the same for all 7 planes, I'm touching on them. You'll see why in a second, is the principle of mentalism. So this is that all is mind, the universe is mental. That is the first law. The second law is the principle of correspondence, which is as above, so below, as below, so above. Next, the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. You don't need to write all these down. You'll have the slides after if you want. So they're going to get bigger. The principle of polarity is number 4. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Number 5, the paradox principle of rhythm. Everything flows in and out. Everything has its tides. All things rise, all things fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. 6, principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. And number 7, principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. So these are the 7 laws that remain true, whether you go down to the subatomic particles or you expand all the way out to the totality of all there is. We won't go to that at the moment, but the total, the all of these laws exist within the total, the all. But things change at that very expanded state. All right, why is this important to know? Well, this is important to know because these laws govern all effective tools and techniques used for self-mastery. This is really what I want you to hear here. You need to understand these laws because they govern effective tools and techniques for self-mastery. Therefore, if a meditation or some other tool or technique doesn't intelligently work with one of these laws, all of these laws, it will either be incomplete or ineffective. This is why processes that work, and why processes that don't work, because they are either utilizing or not utilizing the understanding of these universal natural laws. All the SPY processes I'm going to teach you work with these laws. Let me give you a few examples so that you can see that we've already been studying this week in, week out. Number 1, this here, I'm teaching you cause and effect. This is all cause and effect. Data comes in, cause is in the perception, cause is perception, effect is your prediction, which creates the emotions and behavior. There is cause, there is effect. Law of karma, there is cause, there is effect. And this is just, we could look at cause and effect on a subatomic particle. We could look at cause and effect in your relationships. We could look at cause and effect of eating unhealthy food. There's so many, you could look at it on every plane of existence. But this is the overall diagram of cause and effect. Actually, all the principles are in here, but I just want you to see. This is cause and effect, you've already been learning. This is the universe is mental. We talked about this when we talked about mushrooms. We said that monad, life, God, is pure energy. And that this, when it moves through the mental universe, trauma, concept, source, this is a human mentalism, obviously. So on the human level, we create our mental universe, but this is the same through all levels of existence. And the way that we can understand that is because as above, so below. I'll show this to you in a second. So this is a good diagram of the universe is mental. We talked about the principle of vibration last week or the week before, showing that even in our thoughts, thoughts have vibration. These thoughts end up in law of karma. So everything is vibrational, and based on that vibration, there is cause and there is effect. High vibrational thoughts lead to high vibrational experiences. Low vibrational thoughts lead to low vibrational experiences. Everything is vibration, and cause and effect is in everything. We'll talk much more about polarities and rhythm when we get to emotional mastery. But what you'll understand here, briefly, is that when you understand polarities, you understand that if you've gone to the lowest of the low, the opposite emotional experience is the other pole. So how do we swing to the other pole? Now, I show you how to do that through acceptance, through actually accepting the lower vibration, which will lead you into the higher vibrational octave. It's actually the same as applying all the principles of self-mastery to swing to the other side of the pole. You can't do it through denial, rejection, repression, not self-love. You have to apply all the techniques that expand your consciousness in order to swing to the opposite pole in a healthy way. So I want to add a few more this week. This got me really excited. I'm planting seeds, but let me add a few more things. Let me talk about this one, as above, so below. You could say that God is limitless mind. This is how the universe is mental. Take a second, look around you. Just take a moment. Literally look around you. Look at everything around you. Look at nature. Look at your body. Look at everything. What if all of creation, and what you're looking at is nothing but a speck of dust in the total universe, but what you see in the manifest world is a manifestation of the limitless mind of God. And there's so much more than just this. This is just a speck of the limitless mind of God. So imagine that everything that you see, sense, experience is the infinite imagination of God. You are but an imagined aspect of God. Many people say this. So within the limitless mind of the all the different manifestations exist. And this is a principle I want you to see. This is the level I would like you to see it at today, including all of Earth's creatures. Meaning every human being, every animal, every plant, everything, all the rocks even, because it all has consciousness. So all of Earth's creatures are within the creation, the imagination of God's limitless mind. Now, what if we were to take you and have a look at you as an individual and then have a look into your mind? Well, guess what? It's the same thing. Inside of your mind, you have your imagination, and within the mind of each human, all the different manifestations exist, including all of Earth's creatures. So whilst your mind is limited, hence the small aspect, it's still the same. It's still the same. We are in the limitless mind of God, and within you is the limitless mind of, well, it's the mind, limited mind at the moment, but it's the same thing. It's just a teeny tiny fractal aspect of it. And if you want to expand that, you get closer to the limitless mind. But as above, so below. This is just one way of looking at it. The other obvious way is to watch this for 3 seconds. As long as it doesn't. It's the other way of saying it, right? When you look in fractal geometry, no matter how deeply you go in, it's just repetitive patterns. All the way in, all the way out. So what I want you to think of right now is that you are fractal pattern of the earth. This just goes on and on. And all the geometry and everything that you want to know about the universe is in there. So you are a fractal of the infinite. If you study the law of as above, so below, as above, and the principle of mentalism together, what will actually be explained is how we are simultaneously one and the same as the all, individual, and how nothing is outside of us at any level of existence. This is why if we hurt another, we hurt ourselves. Guys, come back here. No, not here. People always have questions about this one. Can just look at this diagram for a second. Just look at this diagram with all the parts in it. And these are all you, different aspects of you. There's Frank, and there is Lucas, and there's Alana, and there's Holly, and there's Jawei, and there's Rhiannon. Okay, so where are the people in here? We are one with the universe, with God. And yet at the same time, we're individual. Can you see that? But even though we're individual, we're still inside of oneness. Therefore, if you hurt another one, you're hurting yourself. You know, the easiest way to understand this is to look at a tree. So all the information is in nature. So think about a tree. I tell this one a lot. Imagine the tree were God, and all the leaves are all the people. If a leaf hates another leaf and goes to war with another leaf, it is going to war with the tree that is also itself. Does that make sense? So if you hurt another leaf, you're simultaneously hurting yourself. If you hurt yourself as a leaf, you like to beat yourself up, you like to be cruel to yourself, guess what? You just hurt the whole tree. It is like this at every level of existence. You cannot get out of it. So if you're that person who goes, oh, I'm going to self-sacrifice myself so that I can do the right thing for all the other leaves, it's impossible. Because in the hurting of yourself, you already hurt the whole. This is why love has to be true. It has to be true. And that can only happen when you elevate your consciousness to realize the truth of who and what you are. There is no level of consciousness in the totality of creation in which you hurt yourself or you hurt another, you do not hurt the whole. And guess what? The whole already knows about it. I also like the tree metaphor because, you know, if a leaf hurts another leaf, yes, it may be painful at some level, but the tree is ultimately okay. So it's the same thing in the universe, you know, if we kill another human being, still hurting ourselves, still hurting the whole, but at a higher level, it doesn't kill the tree. But we could destroy the tree. We could kill all the leaves and we could suffocate ourselves and, you know, try and destroy the tree, but the roots will never be killed and it will just recreate itself and give it another go. All right, getting close. Okay, I'm just going to give you guys a glimpse into this one for now because this is what excited the absolute pants off me. You ready? Can you handle a bit more? Let me just check you guys. Let me come back in here, look at all your faces. All right. Can you handle a little bit more? Yeah? All right, ready for the next one? This one's the one that is exciting me more than anything right now. Principle of gender. I'm going to teach this one again and again when we get into accessing expanded states, but let me visually share with you what I heard when I read the principle of gender. Inside of the principle of gender at the highest level, there is the I. The I represents the masculine principle of mental gender, the aspect of beingness. The I projects energy towards the me, the feminine aspect. The I has the capacity to step aside and witness. Its tendency is to give out or express. Now, before I go any further than this, how many of you have done the meditations before with me or going through the meditations where you become the space? You become the oneness, the space, the witness. Okay, this is the I self, not the I and something else, the I self. You know what this space is? You've had this experience. If you haven't, we're going to do it again and again. So there is the masculine. It's the I. We started to talk about this for those of you who've done this before in Mother Father module in mirrors. But the Kybalion put this in a way that I have never heard it so well presented before. Now, before I share this, how many of you have done those meditations with me where you firstly become the I, you become the space, and then I get you to imagine something within the space. And I say, put you there, you know, the you there, you know, the part, the whatever is there. And you feel like there is simultaneously I and then the me. And you never really become one or the other. We've had questions like this all the way through this type of exploration, but where you become the infinite I and say, but there's also me. Well, it actually defines that me is the feminine within inside the I. So we never get rid of the I and the me. They become part of the whole thing. So check this out. So the me represents the feminine principle of mental gender. There we go. That's what it looks like. Anyone had a meditation that kind of feels like this, where you become the I and then there's this energy in the center and it's the part or the thing you're working with, whether that's a mental representation or a feeling or an emotion? Well, this is the aspect of becoming. So this is the I that's projecting the energy, and this is the me that is becoming. This is the feminine. It receives energy from the I, the masculine. It has the capacity, the me, to create the world. What through? Imagination, creativity, emotion. Its tendency is to receive mental impressions and direction from the I. Now, remember when I took you into the meditation in the last week and I said, okay, we're going to access the oneness space and then we're going to look back at the part, and I'm going to get you to question the difference between the beliefs in the two. And you're looking at the part that has the limited belief and the space that has the expansive belief. This is the conversation between the masculine and feminine. And the masculine is starting to say, ha, 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 look at your limited perception. You are not unworthy. The truth is. And it starts to send mental projections of the truth, of virtue towards the feminine, and lift the feminine through sending that type of virtue. We are one. Or, this is how it happens. And then the feminine receives that energy, receives that understanding, and can start to create worlds with it inside of the imagination. So this is meditation right here. I'm giving you the internal dynamics of our meditations that the Kybalion thousands of years ago already understood. Now, the feminine principle has a much more varied field of operation than the masculine. Please do not think man and woman. Obviously, we're beyond man and woman. That's just one aspect of this energy explanation. So the feminine principle conducts the workings of generating new thoughts, words, concepts, ideas, including the work of imagination. Guys, I want you to start to think about what I said before. Put this together. New thought, new ideas, new concepts. That is part of your emotional intelligence, your ability to create new thought. The masculine principle contents itself with the work of the willpower in its various phases. And yet without the aid of the masculine will, without the aid of the masculine will from the masculine principle, the feminine principle is apt to rest content with generating mental images, which are the result of mental impressions received from outside instead of producing original mental creations. They are literally explaining socialization here. I'm going to do it again in my words. I'm just going to put the first piece down. Very few people truly employ the masculine principle and are content to live according to the thoughts and ideas instilled into the small me, the me, which can get smaller and smaller and smaller depending on your consciousness, from other minds. This is what makes a majority of the population butt sheep. So let me say that again. This is really, really interesting. God, I'm fascinated right now, if you can't tell. So the me energy, the feminine energy, receives impressions from the outside world if it is not connected to its internal wisdom. Now, we get cut off from that when we're young, and we start receiving all those mental impressions, which we lay into our consciousness, and most people walk around as expressions of all of those mental impressions. The way that I saw this, which is funny, this is how they gave it to me. It's very apt for our state of consciousness. Any human being who has not connected to their I, to their masculine principle, is a human being whose energy becomes all unruly. And they like gossiping and bitching and they don't know what to do with the energy. They're creating crap. They can't help it. They're creating mess and rubbish and shame and guilt because their energy is unruly. There is no direction. There is no commitment. There's no discipline. There's no focus. It's just unruly creation. So when I look around the world and I look at people hurting each other and bitching and moaning and whinging and doing all these things and blaming and super unconscious, this is what's happening. And we could call it the unruly feminine energy, which could be completely misunderstood in the wrong context, because then the idea becomes, oh, well, the men have to tame the stupid women. No, that is completely a bastardization of the understanding. It is something happening within you. It's about you connecting with you. Now that I space, now Jawi, I said, come to call today because this is what's going on. That I space that I'm guiding you guys into again and again and again and again is masculine principle. Now, how many of you actually sit and stay in that space throughout the week? Very few, because you very quickly drop it to go back to your unruly, untamed feminine energy in many ways. So I'm actually asking you, develop willpower, develop strength, develop that clarity of thought, that I becomes the one in you that says, that is not the truth. We are not unworthy. Remember yourself. Let me provide you with the law. Let me provide you with the laws of nature. Truth, polarity, knowing, wisdom, and it provides an amazing foundational principle for the feminine to create beauty. Can you see how these two beautiful things come together? And I got so excited because I'm like, this is what I've been teaching you guys for fucking years. I just didn't know how to give it the language. So I'm like, we are deeply in this for a long time. And it goes on to say that most of the population has not actually developed their masculine, which is very interesting, because it says, oh, we've become out of balance in the planet, right? We're too masculine, not enough feminine, but we're like limited masculine. We're talking about we've developed too much intellect or whatever, but what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about the divine masculine. We've lost that, and we've lost the divine feminine. So just hold this image in your mind, right? Because this dictates our meditations and our processes. We're almost there. You will come to see that almost all of the meditations I'm teaching you employ this very exact principle. And I do this all the time. It is the very thing I figured out was missing from most people's processes 10 years ago, because they either had no idea of the I or no idea how to access it. This is what I realized through studying self-inquiry. Nobody knows how to access it, or even if they know it exists, they don't know how to access it. So they don't know what they're doing. They're doing all their visualizations just in creativity. If you are just trying to create and come up with new ideas without having this masculine principle, you can't, because the energy and the data that you have access to is coming from your conditioning. It's all in this diagram as well. So the way that you actually birth new ideas is when you marry these two principles, which is really cool. It's also not enough just to become the I on its own. That's only half the story. When I began teaching this, I would teach meditations that take people into the I, and I realized pretty quickly it was only half the story because of people's feedback. It wasn't enough. Something was missing. So that caused me to dive down the rabbit hole. And now, only now, I'm like, here is an incredible way to communicate the other half of the story. The second half is to fully engage with the creative process of life, which also means, look, it's all in here. You can't just become the I and step out of life. That's not the whole point. The whole point is to then direct that energy back into the creative process. Here is recreation. Death, birth, recreation. So we actually become involved with the creative process of life through a dynamic dance of activating both true masculine and feminine energies within you. This is all I'm going to say about this for right now. Oh, I really want to read this, but we don't have enough time. Okay, I'm not going to read this week. I'm just going to summarize it. I was going to read a teeny tiny bit of this. I'm summarizing it here, so we can talk about it later. The way to actually start to master these different planes of consciousness is that you want to lift your consciousness up to the next plane. And what you do is you become, what it says, a servant of the higher plane, but a master of the lower. So let me show you how to do this. If you can lift your consciousness to master your emotions, you have now become a master of the body, but still serving on the plane of the emotional. If you lift your mind, if you master the mind and you lift the mind to the causal, the Buddhic, the Atmic, the monadic, you still serve on these planes of consciousness. You serve on the higher planes, but you master the lower planes. This is what masters do. This is the secret wisdom. In this case, what you're mastering is your IQ, EQ, CQ, and SQ. You're using these things. Here it is. It's all here. You are using these different levels of intelligence to master your mind at higher levels, you will always be a servant to the principles of law, of nature, but you can master the lower planes of consciousness. This is what we're doing. It doesn't mean to control or bully. You're actually mastering them through higher and higher understandings of love. It's incredible. All right, now we got to move into integrating the human needs here. If we want to talk more about how to master the, you're going to experience it. That's how we do it. We lift our consciousness, and the way they put it in the book is that a log in the ocean is going to be thrown about by the waves, right? And a swimmer has the capacity to choose to swim. Actually, we'll use a surfing analogy. A master knows how to surf because it knows how to read and work with the laws of the ocean and nature, right? But an amateur is rolling around in the whitewash, choking, and blaming the ocean for killing it. That is the difference between people who haven't mastered themselves. So mastery is learning to surf using the laws of nature. And immaturity is dying in the ocean and blaming the ocean for your suffering. Both are in the same universe of laws. They're both subject to the same law. That is a way to think of this. Okay, we've only got a few slides left. We now have to weave the human needs into this. Told you it was a big one today. Just keep breathing. Human needs. Many people are deeply confused about our human needs. They wonder why we have human needs at all. Why we have needs as humans, but don't have needs as the ultimate primordial essence, pure spirit, the all. So people say, how does the spirit, ultimate all, have no needs, and why do I as a human have them? So this confusion is largely due to a perspective shift that is required, and it requires you to understand the nature of reality deeply. So let's start by holding this idea in your mind. As human beings, you have certain needs that could be categorized, you studied them this week, as uncertainty, certainty, uncertainty, validation, love, connection, expansion, and contribution, right? These are the human needs we looked at. I gave you quite a simple task to study these this week. I want you to think about this. The reason we have these needs at the level of the human is because at the level of pure spirit, all these needs are fundamentally the truth. I was listening to this the other day and being like, we need love, we need uncertainty, we need validation, we need connection. And I'm like, but at the highest level, that is what source is. It is love, it is connection, it is validation, it is uncertain, it is all the things. It is the masculine, the feminine, the creative. So the reason we have these needs as a human is because they are fundamentally the truth at the higher level. So in other words, pure spirit is already certain, uncertain, valid, loved, connected, expanding, contributing, and more. From the highest perspective of spirit, which is actually beyond perspectives and categorization altogether, there is already a complete experiential knowledge that all needs have been and always will be met. That you would have heard, right? So at that high level, it already is met. Now here's the trick. Until you lift your consciousness to that level, which we called last week right view, you are not aware at a conscious level that those needs are met. So you will experience them as unmet because you don't know they're met. So your perspective or your perception leads to the outcome of painful experiences emotionally, relationally, and physiologically, right? So now can we come back to the biology? If you don't know that your needs have already been met because your consciousness is not at the level of understanding the intrinsic nature of those needs, you are going to have a belief that they are not met, and that is what is going to create painful experiences as if your needs aren't met. Now, why the heck would we do this to ourselves? Well, guess what? It's a perfect design to help point you back towards the true nature of love. How? Because essentially, the loss of your needs, which happens through trauma and socialization, you understand that, right? Trauma and socialization is the experience of losing these needs, which we're going to talk about a heap, leads to fragmentation. Parts, what is that? Disconnection, suffering, sometimes even the death of the physical body. How? Because when you separate yourself, you go and you perceive everything as threats, you decrease the body budget, and that can lead to your death. It's all in the design. Low immune function leads to disease and death. Whereas allowing your needs to be met at every level of awakening is what actually will lead you like a compass back to source. So if you actually focused all your attention on having all those needs of yours met every second of your journey, it will lead you back to source. Let's keep going. Next major misconception that we must overcome is the idea that these needs can all be met by you. Let's break this one apart. Although this may sound like a contradiction at first, this statement is both correct and incorrect depending on what you mean by you. So let's have a look at this. If by you mean the little self, the aspect of your personality that sees yourself as a single unit, a single leaf, a single cell, and other people as other units out there, outside of you, not connected to you, then you are fundamentally in a state of delusion. That's a deluded state of thinking. Separation, it's not real, it's fine. We're just in different varying states of delusion right now. This you cannot meet all of its needs on its own. That's like one cell saying, I can survive and thrive as the body without any other cell. That's like one leaf saying, I will survive without this tree because I don't like the tree. I don't like other people. I'm going to do this all on my own. The only reason a little tiny leaf, a little tiny cell, a little personality would try and convince itself that it could meet its own needs is because it's experienced so much trauma, betrayal, and hurt from other people that now it doesn't trust anything and it doesn't want anything to do with anybody. But again, you've got to see that's all fundamentally flawed, because what that means is you don't trust yourself. You don't want anything to do with other people because you don't trust yourself. It's all inside outside. Now, if you say the big you, when you say if you say I can meet all my own needs, and when you say I, you mean the big I, the big you, the one that is everything, everywhere, everybody, both seen and unseen, the non-physical, the plants, the animals, other people, all of it. If this is what you mean by you, then yes, this you can meet your needs, but this you includes everything. What this means is that other people are also you, and that therefore other people are fundamentally necessary in meeting your needs. Imagine this. Imagine if the most important, the most powerful way you could get your needs met is to let somebody else love you. That may be the next step towards spirit, is to allow somebody else to love you, because it will break down the barrier that you've had around your heart. So other people are fundamental in this journey. I want you to weave the human needs into your growing understanding of the journey of awakening. Your consciousness will only expand as fast and to the degree you allow your needs to be met. Sometimes this means letting another person love you. This remains true at every level of expansion until you reach profound levels of embodied understanding that your needs are already met. At every level of awakening, you must question, what is the most aligned way for me to have my needs met now? If that's the only thing you take out of this last 2 pages, write that down. At every minute of every day of your expansion, you should stop and say, what is the most aligned way for me to have my needs met now? The answer to this question will continuously change depending on your level of consciousness. At every level, that will change. But it will always lead you back to healing, integration, and love with both yourself and others. This is why the human needs are a compass back to love. Almost done. I'm at 78 of 84, and the last couple are very simple. This is based on something one of you asked last week, so I want to give you a helpful perspective here. Let's say this is your current state of consciousness. All right, what did I do over here? Here, let's say this is your current state of consciousness. It's down here somewhere. Told you it was going to be a big one. How are we going for time? All right. Let's say this is your current state of consciousness over here. You have a slightly higher IQ than EQ and a slightly higher SQ than those. And let's say your creativity is around there as well. I forgot to put that one in there. Now, you have to figure out how to elevate your consciousness without denying, bullying, belittling, or disregarding your current state, because that's denial. Jiawei, this was for you. I literally wrote this for you. So you have to figure out how to elevate your consciousness, right? Without denying your current state of consciousness, because you had this beautiful question about the I am scriptures. So I wanted to share this with you. However, at the same time that you do not want to deny your current state of of limited consciousness, you also don't want to think out of alignment with the ultimate truth of things, do you? Because that's also self-rejection. So if you're rejecting your limited consciousness, self-rejection and pain. If you reject the higher conscious, self-rejection and pain. So we have a conundrum to figure out. How do you rectify this seeming contradiction of two very different truths? I am both unconscious and conscious. And you got to ask yourself, am I the small self who is currently in a low state of consciousness and pain and suffering to a certain degree? Or am I the big self who is ultimately consciousness itself? Which one am I? How do I think? The truth is, obviously, you're both. What's even more fantastical to understand is that the all, so let's say your highest state of consciousness, the ultimate self, already knows your current state of consciousness. Think about this. The universe already knows your current limited state as the you that you are, the character that you are right now. God already knows that. Put another way, God is fully aware that you, the small you, are currently quite unconscious of yourself and is totally fine with it. Please hear this, is totally, completely, unconditionally fine with your limited state of consciousness. God is okay with your unconsciousness. Can you hear that? What this means is that if you want to hold a higher perspective, one closer to that of God, you have to recognize the paradox that you are ultimately conscious and unconscious at the same time and be totally fine with it. That is how you lift your perspective. You've got to be totally fine with it. Because that's love. Love is totally fine with your unconsciousness, accepting of it, in fact. One of the major problems we're facing in our current spiritual climate that I'm always having to help people figure out, like this is huge, is that we've made being unconscious a bad thing. No one wants to be unconscious. Everyone's terrified of their ego and being unconscious. So no one wants to admit their level of unconsciousness because it makes them feel bad. It makes them feel guilty. They feel ashamed of their unconsciousness, etc., etc. But look what happens if we don't admit our level of unconsciousness. We're in denial, which puts us at the bottom of the conscious state based on all of our definitions and beliefs around unconsciousness. So what this leads to is everyone trying to prove how conscious they are. But the way that they are doing this is by denying their unconsciousness. Guys, please listen to this. What does denial lead to? More unconsciousness. A good rule of thumb here, ready? This may make you laugh. Think about this in yourself. Is that the more conscious somebody tries to tell you they are, the more awake, aware, someone's like, I'm really awake, I'm really conscious, I'm really this, the more they're fucking admitting to you that they are deeply unconscious. The more someone's trying to prove their consciousness, the more unconscious they are, because someone who is conscious would never do that. They don't have anything to prove. So there is a good rule of thumb for yourself. This is a form of overcompensation to try and feel better about yourself. Or if you see someone else doing it, they don't feel good. They're actually suffering. And they're trying to prove to you that they're conscious because they don't want to admit that they're suffering, because their suffering is proving that they're unconscious. And they've made unconsciousness the devil. They don't think anyone will like them because of it. Guys, you have to admit your level of awareness. You have to become aware of your low state of consciousness. The second you admit it, you are raising your vibration, right? So what I'm pointing you towards here is the fact that love, source, God has absolutely no problem with your unconsciousness, because pure spirit does not judge itself, and you are spirit, and it's not afraid of itself. It's not afraid of unconsciousness. So there is no resistance. There's no rejection or denial of any of the unconscious aspects of you at the higher planes of existence. Conversations with God, Book 1, does a really good job of explaining this again and again and again and again if you need to go through it 1,000 times. So what I'm pointing you towards is attempting to think in a way that is honest based on your current state and that doesn't reject or deny any aspect of yourself. For example, it actually might be truthful to admit that you are experiencing disconnection, loneliness, confusion, and are being aggressive or passive aggressive in your life due to being at a low level of awareness. That's what that is. That's the effect of a low state of consciousness. And you've got to recognize it and say, I'm actually at a low state of consciousness, because that will actually raise your consciousness. And at the same time, still hold in the back of your mind that you are the infinite, connected, whole, clear, and universe that has never behaved like a passive aggressive asshole. Both are true. Can you see how you can do that? You can do that. This actually makes a human being really amazing to be around. They're like, I'm the infinite universe and I'm a fucking asshole at the same time. I know it. Cool. That just made you safe. That's a safe human being right there. That's a human who's aware of their limitation. This doesn't mean you want to justify bad behavior. People like to pendulum swing from one side to the other. So some people are like, well, if God isn't judging me, then I can do whatever the fuck I want because God doesn't care. So I can just do this and who gives a fuck? And guess what? You actually can have that experience if you want. You can choose to not judge yourself for being an asshole and continue to be an asshole. And God will be fine with it. That's the truth. God will be fine with it. You'll be invited back into love, just like anybody else. But the reason that you don't want to do that and that you want to seek to elevate your awareness is actually because of the 7 laws, because cause and effect. If you're an asshole, that's what you're going to experience in your life. If you hold walls up around yourself, if you think you're unworthy, if you think the world is stupid, if you think all these things that cause disconnection, guess what? Cause and effect, you'll have a shitty experience. That's how it works. So the reason you don't want to do that is because ending your suffering leads you back to the experience of your natural state. It just feels better. It's nice to end your suffering. The cause and effect becomes better. Your health improves, your relationships improve. So you become a nicer person. And the effect of that is nice. Cool, your choice, right? It's like the last slide here. So the I am perspective is completely aware of itself, meaning that it never judges, denies, disowns, pushes against, hates, or rejects any part of itself. It knows all and accepts all because it is all. If you really want to embody the I am perspective, know that this perspective also comes with complete acceptance, total understanding, and instantaneous forgiveness of everything, everywhere, all at once. That is what elevating your consciousness does. When you start to practice these I am thoughts, what you're actually attempting to do is lift your EQ and IQ and SQ all at the same time to higher and higher levels of understanding. So please know the all, knows all, sees all, is all, loves all, forgives all, accepts all, understands all, holds all, protects all, controls all, frees all, knows all. The perspective of the all is the ultimate perspective. There is nothing greater. There never was, there never will be. All the laws of life exist within the all.